Hello everyone, my name is Mark. I want to share a bit of my story with you. For 5 long years, I was caught in a whirlwind of unfulfilled promises and false apologies from my girlfriend, Tina. Despite my dedication and love, she never truly made space for me in her heart, always holding out for her first love. It was a painful and confusing time, filled with hope and heartache. But now, it's time to break free. I've moved on from the past, and while Tina is now begging me to come back, I've found my own path forward. Welcome to Lobby Stories. Chapter 1. I first met Tina at the city's prestigious Best Chef competition. I was young, driven, and determined to make a name for myself as a chef. Tina, on the other hand, was 3 years older than me and already a senior at our college, a respected figure in the culinary department. From the moment I saw her, I was captivated. Her beauty was something out of a dream. Her eyes were bright, full of ambition and passion. But behind that light, there was a shadow. I'd heard the rumors. She had recently gone through a painful breakup with a famous chef, someone well known for his good looks and notorious reputation as a heartbreaker. I could understand why she might have fallen for him, but when I learned how carelessly he had treated her, I couldn't help but feel pity for her. Determined to excel, I threw myself into my studies and practice. I worked harder than anyone else in the department, honing my skills, perfecting my technique, and developing a unique plating style that soon made me stand out. Word spread about my abilities, and before long, I became something of a rising star in our culinary program. Everything was falling into place. Then, one day, Tina approached me. She needed an assistant for an important dining project, a grand wedding, one of the most high-profile events of the year. The opportunity felt surreal. Working alongside Tina, helping to prepare the food for such an extravagant occasion, it was like a dream. The wedding was a resounding success. Guests couldn't stop praising the food, and the compliments poured in. I was exhilarated, but more than anything, I felt a deep sense of pride working with Tina. After that, she asked me to continue working with her on a part-time basis. It seemed like the perfect arrangement, a steady income and the chance to learn from someone I admired. But what I hadn't expected was how much my feelings for her would grow. Every day I spent by her side, every late-night project we worked on, brought me closer to her. I was falling, deeper and deeper, even though I knew her heart had been shattered once before. And yet, I couldn't stop myself. Chapter 2. The day of my graduation was one I'll never forget. I had planned everything meticulously. I was ready to confess my feelings and ask Tina to be my girlfriend. After the ceremony, I nervously approached her, my heart pounding. When I finally mustered the courage and proposed, her face softened, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes. Admiration, maybe even affection. She blushed, smiled, and hugged me tightly. That was the beginning of us. We started dating, and from then on, my life revolved around her. Caring for Tina became second nature to me. I cooked for her, not just for her restaurant, but for her personally. Seeing her smile after a long day, knowing I had a part in it, made everything worth it. With my unwavering support, her restaurant business began to flourish. Tina's name became synonymous with excellence, and her profits skyrocketed. I was proud, knowing that in some small way, I had contributed to her success. Yet, as the years passed, something shifted between us. There was a distance in her eyes, a hesitance whenever things got too intimate. She never truly opened up to me about her feelings. It was as though there was always a part of her heart that I couldn't reach, a place where I wasn't allowed. Sometimes, I couldn't help but feel like a third wheel in my own relationship. Tina seemed to judge me for the smallest mistakes, and no matter how hard I tried, I felt as though I was constantly being compared to someone I didn't know. I began to suspect that she was comparing me to Rocky, her ex, the man who had broken her heart. But it was just a hunch, a shadow in the back of my mind, and I had no real proof. I told myself it was nothing. Tina had chosen me, hadn't she? She was loyal. It was just her way. I tried to convince myself, but everything changed one fateful night. A major announcement reverberated through the tight-knit culinary circle we were part of. Rocky, Tina's first love, was returning from the U.S. The rumor mill was buzzing with stories of his downfall. How he had lost his restaurants in a messy divorce and now, penniless and desperate, had flown back to China to rebuild his career. He had entered the new national competition, the same one I was preparing for, the one that could crown someone as the best chef in the country. Suddenly, the past I had tried to ignore was crashing into the present, and the unspoken tension between Tina and me felt more palpable than ever. This wasn't just any competition anymore. It was personal. Chapter 3. In the world of competitive cooking, it wasn't just about skill. It was about creativity, innovation, and presenting something entirely unique. The competition required each contestant to create new recipes with innovative plating styles, dishes that could surprise even the most refined palates. I had been working tirelessly, crafting new recipes and experimenting with flavors, all in preparation for the biggest event of my career. Tina supported me, or at least I thought she did. She gave me advice, tasted my dishes, and offered feedback. For a moment, I believed we were in this together. But one day, everything changed. I overheard her on the phone with someone whose voice I immediately recognized. It was Rocky, Tina's first love. My heart sank as I realized she wasn't just talking to him. She was helping him prepare for the competition, too. Without hesitation, she offered him my position in her restaurant, so he could practice his cooking. It felt like a punch to the gut. The role I had built for myself in her restaurant was crucial. My recipes were the foundation of her success, and now she was handing everything over to him as if I didn't matter. I felt abandoned, betrayed, but part of me still clung to the hope that we could talk it out, find some compromise. Maybe she just didn't realize how much this was hurting me. I approached her, my heart heavy, and tried to explain how I felt. But the moment I started, her response was cold, distant. The way she spoke to me was nothing like the sweet tone she used with Rocky. The shift was drastic, like night and day. She was warm and affectionate with him, but with me, there was only frost. Despite the pain gnawing at my heart, I tried to stay calm. I asked her about Rocky, hoping she would reassure me that nothing was going on between them. She did, but her words felt hollow. She was still determined to give him my position, and as if that wasn't enough, she assigned me to be his assistant. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tina, the woman I loved, had forgotten that I, too, was competing in the same tournament. She prioritized him without a second thought. The next day, I arrived at the restaurant early, trying to clear my mind. But when I stepped inside, the scene before me was like a dagger to the heart. There they were, Tina and Rocky, sitting close together on the sofa, laughing, looking every bit like a couple. The sight made my stomach twist in pain. It felt like someone was driving needles through my chest. Strangers around me were watching them, whispering, admiring how perfect they looked together. "What a beautiful couple," someone said, and another person murmured, "They're a perfect match." I stood there, head down, tears threatening to spill over. How had it come to this? I was her real boyfriend, yet she never treated me with the same affection she showered on him. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain of being the third wheel in my own relationship was unbearable. Chapter 4. There was a flicker of guilt in Tina's eyes, just for a moment, before it quickly hardened into cold indifference. She crossed her arms and looked at me as if I were nothing more than a nuisance. "Why aren't you doing your work?" she asked, her tone sharp and commanding. "The kitchen needs cleaning. Go and handle it, then we can talk." She spoke to me like I was a servant, not someone she once cared for. The words stung, but before I could respond, Rocky stood up from the sofa and approached me, a smug smile spreading across his face. His eyes gleamed with mockery as he patted my shoulder. "So, this is the new assistant you were talking about?" he sneered. I pulled back, the coldness in my voice unmistakable as I replied, "Don't treat me like that. I'm her boyfriend." I glanced at Tina, searching for something, anything, in her expression that might show she still cared, that she'd defend me. But what I saw on her face made my heart sink deeper. She looked uncomfortable, almost as if she regretted me saying those words aloud. It was clear she hadn't told Rocky about our relationship, and now she seemed embarrassed by it. Rocky smirked, glancing between Tina and me. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice dripping with amusement. Tina's response was swift and cutting. Mark, get to work. You need to help him. The competition is important for Rocky, and I don't want to ruin his chances. Her words were sharp, but they cut deeper than any knife. She spoke as if Rocky's career mattered more than anything else, more than me. I stood there, my chest tightening, my voice shaking as I asked, "What about me, Tina? Am I not going to the tournament too? Don't I matter? Am I not worthy of the same chance?" I felt the weight of humiliation pressing down on me, like the whole world was watching me crumble. "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked, the pain evident in my voice. Tina's eyes flashed with frustration. "You can do it next year," she snapped. "This is Rocky's golden chance. If he misses it, his career will be ruined." My hands clenched into fists, and the frustration, the anger, all of it boiled over. "What am I to you, Tina?" I shouted, my voice breaking. "What am I to you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Tina paused, but she didn't answer. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just Rocky, or the restaurant, or the competition. It was everything. She had already made her choice, and I wasn't part of it. The weight of it all crashed down on me, and I felt my heart shatter. I took a deep breath and said coldly, "Let's break up. We're finished." Tina didn't say a word. She didn't try to stop me, didn't even flinch. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Don't come crawling back to me." Behind her, Rocky grinned, making mocking faces to provoke me, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. It was over. I walked out of the restaurant, the place I had poured my heart and soul into, the place where I had spent countless sleepless nights building something meaningful. And now I was leaving it all behind. As I walked away, the tears that I had been holding back finally spilled over. Not because of Tina, not really. It was because of the time I had wasted on her, the time I could never get back. Chapter 5. Across the street from Tina's restaurant, a new place had recently opened. Modern, vibrant, and already attracting attention. It was established by my former classmate, Sarah. She had always been kind, someone I considered a friend even during our college years. More than once, she had approached me with job offers, asking me to be the head chef in her restaurant. I had turned her down each time, blinded by my loyalty to Tina. Back then, I was in love, and I foolishly believed that staying by Tina's side was worth sacrificing every opportunity that came my way. Now, looking back, I couldn't help but feel like an idiot. I had given up so much for Tina, job offers, career advancements, and my self-respect. And for what? So she could run back to her first love without a second thought, leaving me to pick up the pieces. The painful realization hit me. I had been benched, kept around as a backup, waiting in the shadows for a moment that was never mine. Deep down, a part of me had always known this. There had been signs. Her coldness, the way she treated me as less than an equal, the way she never truly let me in. But I had ignored those feelings, convincing myself that love was worth the pain. But now, the tables had turned. I was at rock bottom. I had lost everything: Tina, the restaurant, even my pride. All I had left was the competition, the one thing that still burned brightly inside me. And when Sarah saw how broken I had become, she stepped in. Without hesitation, she offered me a position in her restaurant, and this time I accepted. Sarah was everything Tina wasn't: warm, supportive, and genuine. Her kindness was something I hadn't realized I was missing until I experienced it again. Working with her was a stark contrast to the years I had spent under Tina's thumb. Tina, who had always been harsh, constantly shouting at me and treating me like a servant, had warped my understanding of relationships. But Sarah, with her gentle encouragement and open heart, reminded me of what true partnership looked like. I couldn't help but reflect on how naive I had been. Tina had never seen me as an equal. I was just a convenient placeholder while Rocky was out of the picture. I had been nothing more than a time pass for her, a temporary distraction in the absence of her real love. That realization stung, but at least now, I had the clarity I had lacked for so long. With Sarah's support, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I had a long road ahead of me, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I was walking it on my own terms. Chapter 6. I remembered, with a sinking feeling, that I had left my recipe book at Tina's house. That book had been my lifeline, a collection of years' worth of work, including the recipes I had meticulously crafted for the upcoming competition. It wasn't just a book. It held the last piece of my father's legacy, his handwritten notes and recipes, which I had spent my life refining and expanding. I needed that book back. With a heavy heart, I went to Tina's house. The lock hadn't changed, and the password was still the same. It was strange, stepping into that familiar space, knowing things would never be the same. As I walked inside, I froze. Intimate sounds echoed from Tina's bedroom. My stomach churned, but at that moment, I didn't feel the heartbreak I had expected. Instead, the last remnants of respect I had for Tina evaporated. She had always kept me at arm's length, refusing any real intimacy, but here she was, openly embracing Rocky, her true love. I swallowed the bitterness and turned my focus back to what I had come for. I moved quickly to the study, searching for my recipe book. My hands rifled through papers, drawers, and shelves, but it was nowhere to be found. Panic began to set in. That book wasn't just important, it was everything to me. Years of work, ideas, and my heart were poured into those pages. The noise must have caught Tina's attention because, soon enough, both she and Rocky entered the room. Tina's face was a mixture of shock and guilt, but she masked it quickly. "What are you doing here? We broke up, remember?" she asked, her tone cold and defensive. I ignored her question, focusing on what really mattered. "Where's my recipe book, Tina? The one I've been working on for years." Before she could respond, Rocky smirked and cut in, his voice dripping with mock apology. "Oh, that? I thought it was just junk, so I threw it out in the garbage." I stood frozen, my mind unable to comprehend what I had just heard. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. That book was the last connection I had to my father, the thing that had kept me going all these years. And now it was gone. Without thinking, rage took over and I lunged at Rocky. I grabbed him by the collar and threw him against the wall, shouting as years of pent-up frustration erupted. Before I could land another punch, Tina slapped me hard across the face. The sting of her hand snapped me back to reality. "It's just a book. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" she shouted, her voice filled with irritation rather than understanding. I stared at her in disbelief, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "It wasn't just a book, Tina. It was the last thing I had from my dad. His recipes, his life's work, everything I've been improving and building on for years. And you threw it away like it was nothing." Tina rolled her eyes, her impatience bubbling to the surface. "It's just a fucking recipe book. You're seriously throwing punches over this?" That was when I knew there was no point in arguing. I could see now that she would never understand what that book meant to me. She had no respect for my passion, my legacy, or the work I had put into building something meaningful. I turned away from her and left, feeling more broken than ever. I returned to Sarah's restaurant, my spirit crushed, and explained the situation to her. She listened quietly, her face full of empathy and understanding. Sarah knew how much that book meant to me, but she also knew I still had the talent, the skill, and the drive. Even when I couldn't see it in myself, she saw it. "Mark, you're an incredible chef," she said softly, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You've lost something irreplaceable, but you still have the knowledge and creativity inside you. We'll work together, and you'll create something new, something even better." With only a month left until the competition, I felt lost and demotivated. But Sarah believed in me. Slowly, her words started to sink in, and I knew I had no choice but to move forward. The competition was still waiting, and I couldn't afford to give up now. Chapter 7. The weeks leading up to the tournament were intense. I poured all my energy into creating new recipes, each one infused with flavors and techniques that I had never explored before. Sarah tasted them, her face lighting up with approval at every dish. Her excitement was contagious, and for the first time in a long while, I felt that spark of passion reignite within me. Her belief in me gave me the motivation I needed. I was ready to face the competition head-on. 1 week before the tournament, however, Tina stormed into Sarah's restaurant, her presence like a dark cloud rolling in. Her face was twisted with anger, and she started arguing with Sarah the moment she stepped inside. "You stole my staff," she accused, glaring at me as if I were nothing more than an object she owned. Hearing those words, staff, cut me deeper than I expected. After everything I had done for Tina, after all the years of loyalty, she still saw me as just an employee, not even worth a second thought. My heart clenched, but before I could respond, Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm and unwavering. "Who are you calling staff?" she snapped, her eyes blazing. "He's not your employee, Tina. He's my boyfriend, and he has nothing to do with you anymore. Why are you here? Get lost." Tina's face darkened, her eyes flickering with anger and disbelief. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me as if trying to figure out how she had lost control of the situation. I could see the resentment in her eyes, the way her lips tightened before she slammed the door and stormed out without saying another word. I turned to Sarah, stunned by her fierce defense of me. Her face was flushed, her cheeks and ears red from the confrontation. She looked both vulnerable and powerful at the same time, her emotions written all over her face. With a shaky voice, she muttered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I smiled, reaching for her hand and pulling her into a hug. I whispered softly into her ear, "It's okay. I don't mind it." Sarah melted into my arms, her small frame feeling like the gentlest thing I had ever held. For the first time in what felt like forever, a new kind of happiness started to bloom in my heart. One that wasn't rooted in pain or obligation, but in something real, something kind. Days passed, and despite Sarah's warning, Tina kept coming back. She no longer carried the air of arrogance, though. Now, there was a hint of guilt in her demeanor, as if she regretted the choices she had made. Each time, she would come with a veiled apology, subtly trying to convince me to back off from the tournament. She hinted that if I did, she would take me back, this time wholeheartedly. But I wasn't foolish enough to fall for her manipulations again. It was clear that Rocky had sent her to try and make this deal. He was threatened, and that made me realize how far I had come. Sarah overheard one of these exchanges from afar, and I could see the rage building in her as Tina tried to persuade me with her empty promises. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Sarah stormed over, her hand flying through the air before anyone could stop her. She slapped Tina hard, the sound echoing through the restaurant. "How dare you?" Sarah shouted, her voice trembling with fury. "How shameless can you be? You threw him away, and now you come crawling back, trying to manipulate him into giving up his dreams for you and your pathetic boyfriend." Tina stood frozen, her face burning with the sting of the slap. For a moment, she looked as if she might argue, but then her head dropped, and without a word, she turned and walked out. I could see the defeat in her posture, the realization that she had lost, not just the competition, but everything else too. I stood there, speechless, my heart swelling with gratitude and love for Sarah. She had stood by me, defended me, and in that moment, I knew I had finally found someone who truly saw my worth. Someone who cared for me, not out of convenience or manipulation, but because she believed in me, respected me, and loved me for who I was. The tournament was coming, but I felt like I had already won something far more important. Chapter 8. The day of the tournament finally arrived, and the energy in the air was palpable. The tension between Rocky and Tina was evident. They barely spoke or looked at each other, but I kept my focus on what mattered. I had made it through the first 2 rounds, emerging as the winner each time, and I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and joy. But the third and final round was different. It was deeply personal. We were tasked with creating a dish for someone we loved, someone who had touched our lives. The challenge was more than culinary. It was emotional. Before the final round began, Tina approached me. Her face was soft, her usual coldness replaced by something fragile. "Do you ever miss me, Mark?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Tina, I don't. And you should stay away from me. My girlfriend might get the wrong idea. So back off." Tina pressed her lips together, her eyes welling up with tears. Her vulnerability caught me off guard. "Mark, sorry about the book. I was the one who told Rocky about it, but I didn't know he'd throw it away." I didn't realize how important it was to you. I'm sorry. I made a mistake, so many mistakes. I shouldn't have given your position to Rocky. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing, that I could be with my lover, but I didn't know what I had until it was gone. After you left, I felt empty. Nothing felt right anymore. Rocky only cares about money and fame, and now I see it. I realize now that he's not the one I love. It's you, Mark. It's always been you. Please come back. I'm begging you. Just as Tina's confession spilled out, Sarah appeared behind me, her hand sliding onto my arm, grounding me in the present. Nice speech, Tina, Sarah said coolly, her voice dripping with disdain. Save it for a debate. Maybe you'll win a prize for it. Now fuck off. Sarah's bluntness hit hard, and Tina visibly recoiled, her face crumbling. Sarah turned to me, her expression softening as she asked, "Are you going to leave me?" Without hesitation, I leaned toward Sarah, gently cupping her face as I kissed her lips right in front of Tina. "Never," I said softly. "You're my everything now." I didn't need to look at Tina to know that her world had just shattered completely. Her last hope had been extinguished. The final round of the competition came, and I poured everything into my dish, drawing inspiration from the love and support Sarah had given me. I created a dish in honor of my father, something simple yet full of heart, just like the man who had taught me to cook. When the results were announced, I stood as the winner, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. Sarah's restaurant, situated directly across from Tina's, quickly became a huge hit. Word of my victory spread, and customers flocked to taste the unique dishes we had created. Meanwhile, Tina's restaurant and her life spiraled downward. Rocky's greed and incompetence led to bankruptcy, and soon, both of them were out of business. Tina and Rocky faded from the culinary scene like a bad dream. A year later, Sarah and I got married in a small, intimate ceremony. Life was kind to us. We built something beautiful together, both in the kitchen and at home. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and our family grew when Sarah gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Our happiness was complete, or so it seemed. But shadows from the past have a way of creeping back when you least expect them. One day, I received news from an old classmate that shook me. Tina had committed suicide. She left behind a letter, an apology, but no one could say for sure to whom it was addressed. Some said it was to Rocky, others whispered it might have been to me. I didn't know, and I didn't care to find out. The life I had now, with Sarah, with our children, was all that mattered. The past was behind me, and no amount of regret or sorrow could change what had already been written in time. Tina's story had ended, but mine was just beginning.